Now we want to look at things that has to do with Nigeria. Efforts being made by the CBN to address the issue of FX in Nigeria. It has been of concerns to Nigerians, to expats, as regards the exchange rate in Nigeria. It is often said that when the dollar sneezes, the naira is in trouble. But what should be done on the part of the Central Bank of Nigeria, who has the responsibility to monitor what has to do with monetary policy in Nigeria? What can be done in the interim? What can be done in the long term to address these issues? We have an expert here with us this morning. We have the privilege of hosting Muktar Mohammed, who is a financial analyst. Glad to have you join us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Ayo. It's always a pleasure to be on your program. Thank you.
Looking radiant this morning, and I like the smile. Perhaps
We have
you're
to
not
smile in
feeling
the
the
midst
impact
of
of the
everything.
exchange rate between naira and dollar. All right.
We just have to take it in our stride.
Great, great. No wonder they say Nigerians are happy people. We learn to move on, irrespective of what is happening. But on a serious note now, that's just to start on a lighter note. But on a serious note now, let's look at the situation we have in Nigeria, looking at the exchange rate between the naira and the dollar. It's highly troubling for an average Nigeria. Let's create a background to this. How did we get to this level for Nigerians to understand? Because some people just have the impression that the federal government should have the magic wand to do wonders and make things work. As someone who has, financial background, give us a proper understanding of what has led us to this situation and what Nigerians need to understand about the economics behind the exchange rate.
Thank you again. What brought us here is things that we've been doing wrongly for decades. And I mean decades, we've been doing things the same way. We expect different results. And we've been using our revenue to supplement our luxuries. And again, for thus far, we've seen how of Nigeria, all about FX was about taking from our foreign reserve to stabilize our currency. We import virtually everything that we need. There was no clear-cut policy to grow the home economy. There was this monster first fuel subsidy that we've paid, or what I call fuel subsidy scam that went for decades and decades, and it was dollars. NNPC became the tower of corruption, paying off most of all these dollars to people that did not even lift a single liter of fuel into the country, PMS into the country. The CBN kept on subsidizing dollar to naira for the bureau de change. $200 million was being given to them every month for doing nothing, just to take it to the market for other Nigerians to buy, to travel, or also to use for other things. So we've been doing a lot of things wrongly for a very, very, very long time. And what happened is that when there's an external shock, because we don't have a robust reserve, we tend to suffer. Then the value of our currency goes down. Now, the only time that we didn't suffer when there was an external shock was when in 2008, when the President Olusegun Obasanjo was in power at that time. We have built a robust reserve by the ingenuities of Mrs. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the then finance minister. She makes sure that we have a very robust reserve at that time. Remember, that's when we had the issue of the excess crude account. So we built those reserves, and again, we were able to withstand that storm. And that was the only time that an external shock came in and we were able to stand. After that, we squandered those reserves by the Goodluck administration through the Governors Forum, led them by Bukola Saraki. That was the only reason that they were going to support Goodluck to become the interim president. After that, Goodluck took the bold step through Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala to remove subsidy when he saw it was becoming a monster. It was eating our revenue. The same people that were in power today gathered all of us in Ojota, and we sang and danced and ate food. And then we brought back the subsidy. And today, 13 years after, the surgery that we refused to undertake, we are not taking it. Now, how did we get to here that is 1,500 now? even in an official market, was we decided to flood the Naira through a World Bank advice. And the World Bank gave us all the assurance that they are going to help us stabilize the currency. They're going to give us, make sure that we stabilize, we float our currency so that market forces will stabilize. Then they forgot, we also forgot to remind ourselves that we don't have the liquidity to leave our currency in the hand of market forces. So we can go on and on. Basically, what brought us here are two major things. We subsidize foreign exchange by giving them a parallel market more power to determine the rate. And secondly, we were busy, I mean, three things that, and then we're busy importing virtually everything we need. Even the government were not, were not exempted from that, previous government, and even including this government. And then lastly, I think the fuel subsidy that we have paid over the years have been one of those three major factors that have impacted our economy that we are suffering for it now.
All right, Muktar, good to see you. Good morning.
Thank you for having me again.
So since the Naira has consistently, the Naira to the dollar exchange rate has consistently defied the CBN policies, what is the way to go now? It is right now at an alarming rate, and there are speculations about it even going plunging further. What can be done?
I think, listen, what we've seen is that we have a CBN that seems they lack ideas at the moment, and they've been coming out with policy. I'm expecting this week there will be another policy document. It's now becoming a weekly affair. You get this policy document today, you get another policy document tomorrow. So this week I'm waiting for which one will come out from the CBN, all in the bid to stabilize the exchange rate. I think they try to run away from the fact. The fact of the market is that the fact of the matter is that we need to earn more effects into the economy. We need to put off our liquidity. What happens to the $10 billion that the Minister of Finance will show off our reserve? What happened to the $3 billion that NNPC have collected as loan to make to stabilize our currency? What has happened that our external reserve is going up, yet our currency is still going up. The Naira is still being beaten and battered by the dollar. What is happening that the bank have injected over 5 billion into the foreign exchange autonomous market, and yet the Naira is still suffering. What is it that is happening? They need to tell us one. But again, the bottom line is that if all this liquidity are in the system and you are not able to stabilize the rate, how will you stabilize the rate? That means we need more liquidity. The challenge we have as it stands now is liquidity. We need to have more dollars into our economy. If we have it, then demand and supply will come. When demands are met and supplies, when supplies are met, and you still have a lot of people still the demand and supply. So when you demand and you're able to supply, once supply exceeds demand, then you see that the rate will definitely come down. But now what we are saying is the demand is exceeding supply, so market forces are playing. So it's the scarcity. So what we need now is for the CBN to begin to attract investment. And like I said in one of the shows I have, is that presently what the CBN is doing is trying to do policy. Policy can only stabilize your rate in the short term. When I talk of policy about sending memos to bank, do this, do that, it will not. Monetary policies is what will stabilize your rate. Physical policy is what will stabilize your rate. There seems to be no synergy between the CBN, the CBN, the monetary policy, and the fiscal side. And that's what happened during President Buhari tenure. We hope it will not happen now, because we have a special advisor on monetary policy to the president. I think he should be advising them at this moment. When you have consumption at $800, that's budget, and then you have investments 1,500, depending by market forces. That's parallel things they are doing, because the fiscal policy is saying we'll have 800 is the exchange rate by the budget. The monetary policy is saying, look, we are going to make sure that market forces determine the rate, and as it stands today is 1,500. You will not attract investors, and the only way you can the only way you can stabilize your rate at this time is to attract investors to come up with FX into your market. That is one. Secondly, you need to engage Nigeria in the diaspora. I was upset when I heard the CBN governor talking about 49 billion that have been spent on educational for educational school fees abroad, and say the CBN governor also have not also done the calculation of how much is coming as a result of these fees that we will spend over the 10 years period. Because as per 2020, the inflow from Nigeria in the diaspora was more than the oil revenue that we earned that year before the advent of COVID. So we must begin to look at how can we engage them to begin to bring FX into the economy. A situation where the president traveled out of the shore of this country to ask investors to come into Nigeria and you can repatriate your money, and then that's the physical side. And the monetary policy comes in and say, look, as an investor, we only allow you repatriate 50% of your funds. The remaining 50% must be here for the next 90 days. So you see, you are talking with both sides of the mouth, and that will not give investors confidence to come to your market. So what are we doing? We need to begin to boost investors' confidence. We need to begin to attract liquidity. How would it have been if the CBN have said, you know what, you can repatriate 50% of your funds out of the shore of this country, then invest the other 50% into our own treasury bill to attract some interest in the next 30 days, and that will boost liquidity. But you can't be telling me that I need to do an investment in my own place and I can't do it because I must make sure that I keep that rate at 50% my funding here for the next 3 months. So those are part of what I say. The monetary policy and the physical side seems to have different idea on how to handle this issue. And that has been the major problem. So you see what the solution? The solution is bring in liquidity, bring in liquidity. And the only way you can bring in liquidity, Nigeria and the diaspora, sale of crude oil, foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investors. Now, which of them do you have control over? It seems that we don't have control over any of them. Now, when you talk about crude oil sales, we've just heard that those numbers have gone up. But OPEC said we did not miss our quota in December. In December, the National Security Advisor said we have made about 1.6 million. Hopefully, we'll begin to balance that number. We'll see how it goes. Then remittance from Nigeria and diaspora has not been coming in. And again, the kind of policy we are bringing in now, will that make them want to bring in their FX into our space? I don't think so. Foreign direct investors, they will not come as it stands because it's very unstable, it's volatile for them. Likewise, portfolio investors. So how do you solve this problem? You need to look at these 4 key areas and begin to bring in policy that will make them want to bring in their funds into our country.
Interesting. Now, let's look at some of the efforts being made by the CBN in recent times to address these FX issue. Part of what was done earlier in this administration is to decide to float the Naira. As an expert in this area, what do you think will have been done differently? And I want you to be very practical here.
Okay. I'm not against the floating of the Naira. I think what we should have done was to make sure we have our house in order, we have enough liquidity in the system. No CBN in the world, no central bank, any part in the world will allow market forces to determine your rates. You must have the war chest. When I mean war chest, you must have the liquidity. At the time we're floating the rate, we should have known what is the original value of the Naira to the dollar. And if it goes above that value, how do we intervene? Because the CBN still is the largest earner of foreign exchange in Nigeria. All the crude oil sales goes to the CBN. It doesn't go to any commercial banks. So they were supposed to look at that and then said, okay, you know what? This is the right price of the Naira to the dollar. Hey, 800 Naira or 750 like they said before. Then you said, okay, we are floating the Naira maybe below that amount. Then it moved to that amount. Then when you see that it's going above that amount, then you come in there and stabilize it. For me, that is the key. So what did we do wrongly? What would have done rightly? Would have made sure that we have the liquidity. We have make sure that we know what is the true value to the Naira and to the dollar. Are we able to maintain that value by maybe not intervening every day? But again, when you realize that, oh, look, the Naira is going to about 850 or 900, and it's not supposed to. What's driving it to that space? Oh, there's no supply. We supply and we balance liquidity. As you are doing that, then you begin to look at other sectors, and that's the physical side. How can you come up with policies that will attract more FX into our economy? The floating of the Naira is good, but if we have been able to float the Naira and maintain stability, by now, maybe the exchange rate would have gone to as low as 650 to 700 because investors will want to come in at that rate, knowing that there is stability. So what have we done wrong? We did not do our homework very well, and that's the penalty. So what we would have done was to make sure we have the war chest to intervene occasionally in the market to make sure that the Naira true value is maintained. That we did not do. And we are still not doing it because why? We don't have enough FX to do that.
All right, one of the reasons the CBN governor gave for the pressure that the dollar is currently experiencing, the high demand for the dollar, is the use for the dollar as payment for tuition by Nigerians who study abroad, and medical tourism and all other needs that Nigerians are currently having that they didn't have several years ago, which made the exchange rates between the Naira and the dollar not to be as high as this. Now, do you subscribe to that? And do you think actually not giving access to those, not giving dollar access to those who need dollar for tuition, medical tourism, and all other transactions that they do currently now, that's makes the demand on the dollar to be high. Do you think that will help in improving the exchange rate between the dollar and the Naira?
You see, it's just looking for an excuse. Like I said, the physical side made it for one of the ministers, which I call the physical side, said that we should not look at the jackpot syndrome as negativity. They also are bringing in effects into the economy. Let me give an example of India. Indian largest inflow of effects into the Indian economy is intellectuals. The MD of Google, the CEO of Google, the CEO of Microsoft, all these people are Indians. And at the time they were doing, these people we went to the US to school. And like I said, if you look at the school fees, about $49 billion in the CBN governor said for the past 10 years, and you look at what these Nigerians in the diaspora have been able to remit into the economy, you realize that it exceeded the school fees that we have given to them. So you shouldn't be saying that. You shouldn't be, you should look at export of your intellectual property as also a means of earning effects into your economy. So you have given them one side of it, but you will need to come up with strategy that will make it attractive for them to bring these effects into your economy. That's what you should be thinking of, not blaming it at them. Now, I've talked about India. When you look at Brazil, Brazil's single export, largest export to outside of the world is one of the largest export to the world is entertainment. And when we talk about entertainment, is football. The NFX by football, whereby a lot of the Brazilian youngsters are being signed up by this foreign football club, and the NFX into that's intellectual properties. So why are we now looking like if the only ways we can stabilize our currency is only by trade? Or no, you should look at education also as a tool of stabilizing your currency. What I've expected the CBN governor to do is to begin to liaise with the Nigerian Diaspora Commission to come together and say, you know what, how can we come up with a fund that will attract investment from Nigeria to the diaspora so that they will bring in most of those effects that are hanging there in, whether they are going through a lot of apps that are available for them to do the medium of exchange and their relative here get the money. Instead, let's see how we can create an investment fund. How can the CBN begin to say, look, we have a diaspora fund, and this is how much we as CBN will be paying you for bringing in this money into your country. Partner with the Nigerian Diaspora Commission. That's what I think they should be doing, not rather than criticizing that, oh, they've paid school fees for them, they've gone out. Like if they have not remitted anything into the country. When you talk about medical tourism, who goes to medical tourism? Is it me and you? We don't go to medical tourism. Remember the last time the former president went to medical tourism for how many? Almost 8 years of his tenure. I think over 3 or 4 years. If we calculate it, it was form of medical tourism outside the shore of this country. Even until the last day of his administration, was still doing medical tourism. The current president also is also doing the same thing. So how many of them patronize Nigerian hospitals? And then do you blame them for not patronizing Nigerian hospitals? No, you don't blame them, because what hospital do you have? The only person, even if say that I patronize Nigerian hospital, was the former vice president, Yemi Osinbajo, when he did an operation here in one of the hospitals in Lagos. All others have gone outside the shore of this country. So if you are saying, okay, don't go for medical tourism, what alternative have you created in the medical sector? Look, Blessing, I have an incident whereby you go for scanning and you are going to scan maybe for let me give you one, for cancer. Do you know that when you do that scanning, your sample will be sent to South Africa? It will take 3 weeks before it comes back to Nigeria. So how do people will survive? How would you start treatment? You will not be able to start treatment until this thing is done. So it's a major challenge, and I don't think the CBN is handling it the way they should handle it, by coming out to blame it on medical tourism and school fees. They need to do something about it rather than complaining.
All right, well said. Now, let's look at the advocacy for redenomination of the Naira. The CBN has said severally that it has no plan to do that this year. But some experts feel that's the way to go, looking at the reality playing out. What's your take, and give us the merit and the demerit if the CBN will go that route at this time?
I'm not an advocate of that. I don't see any merit in it. You look at countries that have done it. Where are they today? Ghana did it. Today, the dollar to the naira to the dollar in Ghana is still very, very high. It doesn't make any sense to do that. Look, the only way you can only way you can save your currency is balance of trade. So that's what you should be thinking about, not trying to do redenomination. At the end of the day, I always say water will find its level. You cannot get away with it. Look, it was the former the former CEO of a Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. I try to remember, Yemi Kale, that said something. He said, you can get away with spiritual sin by going to God and asking for forgiveness. But when you commit economical sin, you will pay the price for it. So no matter how you go, you will pay the price for taking the wrong economic decision. And that's what we are suffering now. So you redenominate your currency and you don't have balance of trade, you come back. You pay for it. And sometimes when you do those wrong policy, you pay a higher price for it. So I'm not an advocate of it. I don't think we need to begin to look at balance of trade. How much are we importing outside, exporting outside the shore of this country? How much are we importing? How much FX are we earning? That's what will stabilize your currency, not redenomination. Redenomination is a short-term policy that makes people excited, but at the long run, if you don't have the balance of trade, then you come back to where you are, and you come back to being worse off than where you were before you redenomination. Because I don't think that's something that we should even think about. The CBN is not thinking about it. I think that's the right thing to do.
Let's look at the new CBN review of the price deviation for exports, which says that the allowable limit of price deviation for exports and imports shouldn't be more than plus 15% or minus 15% of the global average prices, respectively. What's your take on this?
My take on this, Blessing, is what is the CBN? Why is the CBN busy doing what they shouldn't be doing? Why are they not the one putting the rate in the ports at 1,500? They've changed that rate about 15 times, 17 times in the month of February, from a low of 925 exchange, import duty charge to now at 1,500. So what are they saying? If you are not even balancing your own, then you're not telling us that we must not go beyond this. Have you done that to yourself? So you see, we need to be careful the way, because that's what I keep saying. The president says something, a physical side, which I like to say, and the monetary side is saying another thing. The president said, I will not set up a price control board to be controlling Nigerians on how much to sell your goods or that and that. And here we are, the CBN on the other hand is telling you that you must not go beyond this, you must not go beyond this. No, come up with economic policy that will make me not go beyond that. Why is it the port charges are going up by the day? And you say I should remember my goods should be. Port charges have gone up by almost 59% between January and February. And you say that I should not go beyond 15% when you have hiked on about 59%. Come on. Let's be serious here. I don't think it will work.
Now, if you are in position to advise the CBN governor, I know you are not a special advisor to the CBN, but for the sake of this conversation, let's assume you're in that position now. What will be your recommendations in the interim, short term, and then in the long term, for them to be able to address this issue of the free fall of the naira, the issue of liquidity, and also to stabilize the market?
Okay, thank you. I like that word, if I'm the advisor, and you answered it, I'm not the advisor. And I want to remind you of the former president that said, your own is to advise, my own is to take your advice. So sometimes all this, the governor won't say he doesn't have some of these advisors that are going to say what I've said. Now it's not left for him to take it, whether he wants to take it or not. Now, if you tell me in the short time, what I will do is that I look at, I just talked about the port now. I will look at how we pegging expenditure at 800 and then investment at 1.5. So I look the other way. Can we just do the expenditure at 1.5 and then stabilize the rate for investment to come in with 800 for the short term? That's one of the ways I will look at first. Secondly, I will look at how do I come up with a product that will attract Nigeria and the diaspora to earn effects into the economy. Then thirdly, I would do what they have done was to look for how to get cheap funds either through Eurobond or whatever, or through international borrowing to make sure I used to stabilize the currency.
Let's take a look again at the revised price deviation limit of the CBN. Now, earlier you said that the CBN is going into what it should not be going, and the reason you gave for that was that import duty is also a reason, and there are so many other costs to importation or even export. But let's look at this against the backdrop of Forex racketeering. Now, if the CBN says that the price deviation limit shouldn't be more than plus or minus 15%, do you think that will in any way help the situation, as what we see is a trend where within a week you can have two different prices for the same item imported into the country? Now, the price deviation limit is supposed to ensure that the difference is not so much apart from what you have as the global price average of that product. What's your thoughts?
Let's start with global price average. Let's look at where is this produced. The cost of production in the UK and in the US is different. And when you're importing it from China, it's different. That is one. So you don't use the global price in China, then your inflation is about 29%. And you're saying that I won't go beyond 15 to something percent. You're not looking at other costs that I will incur in the port, that still stayed in the port. So if you have hiked your rate at that point, that also is going to come into my cost as a cost of production. Then I'll go in turn that to the consumer. So, like I said, if you have global best practice where your inflationary pressure and that of the US and that of the UK is coming down, then you begin to look at it and say, look, you cannot go beyond this because inflation is about 3 point something percent, the inflation is about 2.9%. So that's when you can begin to say that. So as it stands now, you can't even make mention of that. As far as I'm concerned, it's just been not being sincere. Like you pointed it out. You say global, you're looking at global price. And then global price in the UK, global price in the US is different from global price in Europe because other factors will come to be this. Where is it manufactured? What are the costs of the tariff that they pay? So there's a lot of things involved before you begin to talk about the boundary of 15 or to 10%. It will not work as long as you have not maintained stability, either in inflationary pressure has not come down, neither have you maintained stability also in charges in the port, and neither have you brought stability in the exchange rate. It's not possible.
All right. Globally, the trend now is for nations to look at how they can de-dollarize their economy. You have this advocacy for nations to join BRICS economic bloc, and you have South Africa taking that lead. There are those who argue, some experts who argue that if Nigeria could be part of that economic bloc, that would give an opportunity to sell our crude in Naira. Do you see this being helpful or visible in helping to solve the crisis that Nigeria is battling with?
Femi, how is that possible? Now, let me give you an example of South Africa. They have large car manufacturers in South Africa that manufacture in South Africa. They have gold there they produce gold in South Africa. Their steel companies are doing well. Their per capita income is high. They have power. They have attracted the giants in terms of manufacturers and everything in South Africa. So if you decide to do that, then you are looking at your balance of trade. That's when it works. I'll give you a simple example. How have we not been able to have the single currency in West Africa? It's because we don't have balance of trade. How many trade is it going on between yourself? That's when you begin to say, okay, we begin to look at the median of this. I am doing so exit amount of trade with you. You are doing so amount of trade with me. So instead of me to be, okay, you collect my Naira, then I collect, you collect my own Naira when I'm doing trading. I also collect your own. You know, that makes it sounds well. Because we are doing balance of trade. At the end of the day, you give me back my Naira, I give you back your currency, we'll be able to do balance of trade. But when you look at the balance of trade in Nigeria, you are realizing that we are not even doing it, we are not exporting anything than crude oil. So is it only the crude oil that will now say, okay, we sell our crude. Now you sell your crude and you get Naira. When you want to do turnaround maintenance of your refinery, when you want to do, you don't have the facility to the turnaround maintenance, people are not in Nigeria. And they now tells you that you have to pay them in dollars to come and do that maintenance. How does that work? So people just say things and you don't go Brexit because of China, or US. US is still the largest economy in the world. They are involved in almost everything. All the largest corporations in the world are in the US. So no matter how much you go with this, your Brexit and blah, blah, the Brazil that you are talking about, the China you are talking about, the South African you are talking about, they still do more trade with the United States than any other state. So the median of exchange will be dollar. The US have made themselves a global financial hub. There's no how you can take it away from there. They have power, they have infrastructure, they have cost of fund, they have credit, everything is table. So most of these countries that are saying, look at the poverty rate in these countries. So it will not work.
All right, thank you very much, Muktar Mohammed, financial analyst, for your great submissions on the show today. It's always a delight having you on Ed Exchange.
Thank you, Blessing. Thank you, Femi, for always having me. Always a pleasure to be on your program too. Thank you.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.